Alright, guys, so welcome back. In chapter 7, we continue the idea of using your arrays, right? Uh, okay, so if you look into the slides, we can also handle um, C-in stream inputs, right? So remember C-in, right? Basically, it's getting data from your keyboard, interactively, um, um, communicating with your program there, right? So whatever you key in using C-in now can be redirected into a array variable, right? So in order to do this, you have to basically use C-in, and we have the variable here, sorry, the operator, right, that would put the data into grade and the particular index that you want it to be, right? So if we say grade 0 here, it will sit in the first element in grade, right? So, you can even take three inputs at a time. Of course, this would be separated by some kind of space, and this would be kept into grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, right? So, you can consider taking a lot of data, right? Now, remember when we were saying previously about using some kind of a variable or expression inside of the subscript of a particular array variable, right? So if you look into this, you can have a for loop, right, with a variable I, right, type of integer, right, that would loop through until, in this case, we'll loop through from I equals to 0 to I equals to 4. So it's looping through, it's doing this by iteration. So the first one would be, what this program does, basically it keeps on asking you to enter a grade up to 4 times, right? So the first loop would be I equals to 0, and the first input key in would be input in grade 0, and the next loop would be grade 1, next loop will be grade 2, the next group will be 3, and then 4, right? And it's just 4. This is going to be the end of the execution, because you would have uh, I equals to 5 would not satisfy this um, for loop function anymore, right? The conditions in the for loop function, right? So now it's really important when you are using these arrays, right? You have to check uh, the bounds that you are dealing with, right? So when we're talking about this, when you declare the arrays and you say the size is 10, right, and it's capable of inputting values from 0 to 9, right? So if you're trying to access array 10, this is something what we're saying, it's already out of bound, right? So if you get an error that's saying that is out of bound error, right, accessing array out of bound error, right, it will basically crash your program or produce a program error, right? The compiler itself doesn't really know because it runs during the execution, right? So and this kind of happens without telling you that uh, such a thing occur, right? So make sure during your programming, right, that this is taken into consideration, right? Okay, so when you're trying to display the array values itself, right, similar to the way you were trying to access to store values into it, you can also read values from it and display the output using cout. For example, here you can access the array variable called prices, and refer to the here we are referring to the fourth element, right? So you start at 0 1 2 3 4 5, okay, sorry, sixth element, right? And you would use index 5 here, right? So prices 5, it would result in the sixth element that's being stored into the array, right? So So there are many use to this. You can also use a variable inside it, so grade I, where, or you can loop through it with a certain variable inside it, right? So this is one way to deal with your accessing your arrays, right? So okay, here's is a program example of an array for inputting data and outputting data, right? So here would be a simple program. We look, so let's try to figure out what this program does, right? So if we look into this, we have a numels equals to 5. So we have an array with type integer, right? So int I grade numel, right? So it's initialized, or it's declared to have the size of 5 element. And during the start, the program would basically ask the user to enter 5 grades basically in a loop, right? And when that is over, it will loop through and display the grades for each element being entered, right? So it does this by also doing a loop and basically see out. So see in first and then see out, right? So this is an example of how the program would run. So we have grade 0 equals to 85, 90. So it will follow the input that was entered to similar to the output, right? Because the indexes when we refer to the indexes, it is the same loop that we're using, right? From for I equals to 0 to I less than numel, right? So here's the same case. So we're referring it the same way, and so the output will be displayed the same way, right? Okay. Array elements can be initialized within declaration statements, basically. So when you are using an array, it doesn't really have to be accessing each element, right, through its indexes. You can automatically declare it and initialize it at the same time, right? So you can initialize it, right, during the declaration, right? So let's see how this is being done, right? Now, in order to basically define this uh, values in the array gallons, right? So we have integer constant here with num gallons equals to 20, and we have a variable called gallons, which is an array with the size of 20, right? So what we want to do during initialization, right, during declaration, we want to initialize it with a couple of values, right? 20 values to be exact, right? And we do this by using the curly braces right here, right? And we put 19, 16, 14, all the 20 values that we want to keep into the array gallons, right? So this would basically immediately define those values, right? Okay, right? In this example, right, so you can do this similarly with other types of array, for example a character. However, bear in mind, in a character you would have to have the single quote for each character, right? So now if you're declaring a array, you can omit the size as well, right? So this is actually a valid form, right? So character code, and you initialize it this way, what happens is it knows that the size now is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So it will knows that character, basically the variable code has a length storage of uh, you know 5 here, right? Mean 6, right? So this would be 5 inside here, right? And that's what's gonna the compiler will allocate for that particular variable, right? Okay, so in this case, a simpler method of initializing characters, you can simply put a character type, data type array, and assign it to a particular string, right? So string is it has double quotes and characters have single quotes. Now if you put a string inside of a character array, right? So it's gonna convert all of the 7 characters into an array, right? So okay, so sample has only 6 characters, you say, right? You're right, right? So why is it skipping all 7 characters, right? So bear in mind in a string, right? In a string there is always an escape sequence, right? So when you see sample at the end of the after e, there actually comes a extra character we call a escape sequence /0, right? It's called the null character, right? So what is actually being kept is actually sample /0 here, right? And this is a character, a special character by itself, right? And when we put this into a character arrays, all of these characters, including the null character, will be kept into the codes, the codes character, the codes array, right? So be sure about when you're dealing with characters, at least, right? That at the end of each line of a particular string there is a null character that exists there. You don't see it, but it actually exists, right? And it's being kept when you want to keep it into the particular array, right? So here's an example. So what happens is exactly how it would look like a sample /0 here, right? The last character here is basically the null character being kept, right? And so when you know if you're trying to keep these values and you have it this way, the and you're just keeping characters, you won't have a null character right there, right? So depending on how you want to deal with it, if you want to interchange characters and strings, make sure you put a null character, otherwise this will be difficult to display a string from a character, right? Okay, so we'll come back to this about more about arrays. We'll take a break for a bit and continue in the next session, right? See you guys soon.